And welcome back. Here I'm going to be working on the trailing edges of the left and right elevators along with the trim tab, installing the trailing edge wedge as you see me doing here, and then also installing the foam ribs that are glued in place with Pro Seal. It took a little bit of working and a little bit of research to figure out how to use the Pro Seal applicator that I have. I purchased a kit, I believe from I believe it was Aircraft Spruce, and it's a 6-ounce container of Pro Seal. I want to say it was about 44, 46 bucks, somewhere in there, right around $45. And the container has a plunger applicator to it that you have to mix the two parts together, and that's what I'm looking at here. Doing a little bit of research, going out to my truck and getting my iPad and watched a few videos. I cut that out of this and edited that out. There's no sense in watching a video of me watching a video. So anyway, looked on the internet and YouTube and figured out how to use the applicator and how to mix the two parts properly. And now just getting everything ready to apply the Pro Seal. On the skins, first I'm going to be working on the trim tab here, as you see on the table. You have to prepare the areas that you're going to be gluing the ribs to. You take a bit of sandpaper and sand down the surface, and then I took some acetone and cleaned everything off. You want to make sure there's no grit or dust or anything from the area that you just prepped. And then you take this applicator, as you see me doing here, and you basically cycle the plunger in and out, and you rotate the plunger as you're cycling it. And I think, if I remember right, it's something like 60 some times that you have to cycle the plunger to mix this two-part materials. And it tells you to do it in about a 3-minute process. So anyway, you get it all mixed up, and then there's several different applicators that you can use. You can go get a pneumatic gun if you want. I'm not going to be using this enough to warrant the expense of those pneumatic guns. They're not cheap. The other way you can do it is the old-fashioned method, which is what I used, is essentially a caulking gun. This one is one that I picked up from, I believe it was Spruce Aircraft, or this may have been Vans. Either way, it was only like 15 bucks, and it's made for this applicator. I could have used just any typical caulking gun and then just kind of zip tied the tube to the gun itself to hold it in place, but I figured I'd just go ahead and purchase that from where I got it. And so this stuff is really messy. You definitely want to at least wear gloves like you saw me using there, because this stuff gets, once you start trying to spread it out and apply it to the foam, it gets everywhere, and it's sticky, and I got some on my hands from holding the foam ribs, and it took a few days for it to come off. So at the very least, you want to be wearing gloves. Some folks would recommend getting some coveralls or something that you don't care if you get messy. I was just very careful, and so I didn't worry about that, but I definitely would recommend gloves at the very least. Here you see me getting ready to do the right elevator. The instructions have you install the trailing edge wedge and with the double-sided tape, and you install it and let it on the bottom skin and let it sit overnight, and then the next day or so you come in and apply and put the foam ribs in place. And then once you get the foam ribs in place, then you remove the protective layer of the double-sided tape on the top side of the wedge, and then you close everything up. And going through this process. It's not easy trying to put the ribs in place. The skins and whatnot, you really got to kind of wedge everything apart and try not to get Pro Seal on the skins. Although I found out that it actually, if the skin is not scuffed up, as in you know having to prepare the skins, it actually comes off fairly easily. So that's also why you really want to make sure you prepare the skins well wherever you're going to be applying this Pro Seal, because it with the allodyne covering or whatever it is on the aluminum skin, it doesn't adhere all that well. And I was able to scrape it off with my fingernails and it came right off. So go through and just make sure you position the ribs as best you can in the correct spot, and then it just has you close everything up. As you see here, I'm going through and cleaning the trailing edge to seal it all together, and then put some weights on it and try to get the glue or the Pro Seal to set. In this case, I used a board that went across the span of it to try to distribute the weight, and then I used a couple canisters of liquids that were relatively heavy. Obviously, you don't want it too heavy. You just want just enough to hold it in place and make sure that the glue sets. So now working on the left elevator, putting the ribs in place, and then the same thing, go through and apply the Pro Seal to the ribs and put them in place, and then close it all up. And same thing here, I'll put some weights on this as well. I just went around a garage and found some things that were of significant weight and just let it sit there, and I let them sit overnight, a couple nights, to make sure that the glue sets. Now going through, this is a couple days later, working on attaching the piano hinge to the trim tab. Problem I was having initially was that I didn't have anything that could fit in between the bottom skin and the top skin on the leading edge of the trim tab, and to be able to get in to squeeze these rivets. I tried using just a bucking bar and my rivet gun, but unfortunately the bucking bar, I couldn't get it into the area there, and didn't work very well. Then ended up taking my squeezer and trimming off the top of the yoke a little bit more with my grinder. I didn't have a yoke that was narrow enough to get in there, so I basically just made one narrow enough. In one of the previous steps, I believe it was on the elevator. I think it was, if I recall correctly, on the rear spar. It actually has you modify the yoke to be able to get it into inside of the rear spar of the elevator, or the rear spar of the elevator. And so I just kind of ground it down a little bit further than what it had you do there. It worked. I was able to get in and squeeze the rest of these rivets, and they turned out nicely, and was able to finish assembling the elevator. All right, and with that, I'm going to let this video run out here. I'm going to be working to get a couple more videos out to where I'm at now in the build. The elevators are essentially completed, and I've started working on the tail cone portion, so almost done with this kit. Again, for those who continue to watch, thanks. I appreciate it, and if you have any questions or comments, by all means, leave them below. We'll see you next time.